muted. You got to love that. Welcome into the FSU Voice of College Football, Wednesday, 6:05 Eastern. So running just a few minutes behind today. But guess what, guys? The off season is officially over. The talking season is officially over. I guess not talking season. We still got another 30 and a half days to kind of talk about Florida State versus Georgia Tech in Ireland as FSU opens up the bowl season. But we finally got these guys out on the field. I believe just in helmets and pretty much shorts and jerseys, nothing more than that today. But day one in the books, I know everybody out there is super, super excited. We've been talking about nothing but conference realignment nonstop. We've been talking recruiting quite a bit. Florida State currently with 12 commits, 11 of those blue chips, depending on which one you look at. They're currently number 10 and on 3, I believe, number 18 and 247. But again, we got on the field, we got the practice today, so we'll talk about that a little bit. What we kind of gleaned from the highlights out of practice, getting to hear from Mike Norvell. We got to hear from Finchell Cypress. But according to Mike Norvell, day one, helmets, no pads. We got off to a good start. A guy we've talked about a lot in the offseason that got a really bad rap at Florida State, a guy who is just kind of the scapegoat for anything that happened wrong within the secondary last year, and had a couple kind of highlight plays that people hold against him, is a guy named Finchell Cypress. But according to Mike Norvell, he's really gotten to that next level of approach. His skills have gotten better kind of across the board, and you see what you want to see there. Talking to guys that saw practice, I mean, here's a guy that legitimately looks like an NFL defensive back. They came back for another year. He was already all ACC at Virginia the year before he transferred to Florida State. You're in a secondary full of NFL picks now. He wasn't the star of the show like he was at Virginia, which probably had a defense largely funneled to him, really helped make him stand out. It was a different deal. Just being on the island, a ton of man coverage. There was a bit of an adjustment there. And again, he played a lot better than what people make out. But Finchell, a guy who has gotten better across the board, according to Mike Norvell, he's got that confidence, something with just helmets on without pads we're able to glean. That strength and that speed kind of just across the board has showed up. They've had great corner play pretty much across the board. He was pretty, he gave highlights. He gave a pat on the back to everybody. You look across the board at Azaria Thomas, a guy who has just gotten better and better every single year. Every time there's any kind of break from football, be it the end of the season, between spring and fall, after a bye week, you see Azaria Thomas, you see a lot of the secondary coming together and getting better and better. You didn't hear much about them from the coaches, but you've got Conrad Hussey back there, who's an absolute beast. A guy who I think is in the same vein as Azaria Thomas, somebody who's just going to get better and better and better. You have him out there in his second year. You've got a guy like Devontae Brown coming in, who's expected to be a contributor back there at safety. Kevin Knowles no longer at safety. He's able to come up closer to the line of scrimmage. Shyheim Brown comes back. He's your kind of rock in the secondary. Here's a guy that was like, plus 1,000 recruit coming out of high school. But as far as a Florida State player, like I said about Finchell Cypress, here's an NFL player, an NFL DB that could have got drafted, could have went and played in the NFL, came back, and he's an experienced guy that Florida State can just state having in the back of that secondary, which is huge. You heard, good words about the freshmen and stuff that came in, and that's the difference with this group. It's hard to believe. People have a hard time believing you have a top 5 secondary. You send Jarian Jones in the 3rd round to the Jaguars. You send another corner. So you had a great year. You had Akeem Dent go, sign a deal after the draft. So for that secondary to make a leap forward, it's hard for people to believe. But for Florida State fans, for people that follow the Voice of College Football, the Renegade Report, Spear Addicts, then Media Group, whatever the case may be, you understand that the talent level is just taking another step. As good as Renardo Green was, filling his place is an Azaria Thomas who has just as much work ethic. He hasn't been there quite as long as Green was, but has been there long enough that he has been about the climb from day one. He's all he knows is Mike Norvell. This is his second year with Patrick Surtain. That's another element that people are forgetting. This is year 2 for Patrick Surtain. So as far as an entire group, kind of his philosophy, his principles, those have spread. And this DB group really shines on that field. In the slot, you've got a guy, an Earl Little Jr. that came over from Alabama. You've got a Ricky Knight coming in as a true freshman. I mentioned Kevin Knowles is back over there. A lot of fun. There's a lot of good players there working that slot. You've got the true freshman who I'm always forgetting his name, Edwin Joseph. We saw him playing outside a little bit in the spring game, made some great plays, stopped Darion Williamson on a dead ringer on a post on the goal line. He knocked that thing out. So really excited about Edwin Joseph down there. So everything we've heard about defensive backs, Mike Norvell backed that up. And those charts just keep going up and up and up there. Brock Glenn was a very big kind of highlight everybody out of practice. He was considered to kind of have been the best quarterback at practice on day one, which is, whatever. If you want to say he outplayed DJU and just helmets and shirt and shorts, if that's some kind of controversy or quarterback composition, whatever, what have you. I just take it as a compliment. I take it as Brock Glenn is locked in. Here he is in another year of this offense, a guy who was thrust into a situation last year that maybe he wasn't quite ready for, or just the fact that he was injured, he wasn't able to be prepared for, not that he wasn't ready for it. And we all saw that last game down there in Miami. It was tough. It stung. So to see him out there and being confident bodes really well. He was throwing a lot of nice balls over the middle of the field. In particular, Mike Norvell complimented on him. His eyes getting a lot better looking off safeties and things like that. Elijah Moore apparently caught like a 70-yard touchdown and made 2 or 3 other great plays. When you talk about true freshman impacts, guys that can come in out of the Tribe 2024 and truly impact this Florida State schedule, that's a lot of times a question we get. Look no farther than Elijah Moore. That dude, he just keeps making plays. There's a lot of smoke around this team about Elijah Moore and what he can do in that wide receiver room, in which there's going to be snaps for grabs. There's going to be snaps up for grabs. On defense, it's linebacker. On offense, it's wide receiver, kind of the 2 thinnest spots. I wouldn't say thin. There's a lot of talent at both spots. Really, linebacker has the most talent it's had in a long time. Wide receiver has the most talent it's had in a long time. It's just they don't have the jersey guy. They don't have the nailed down starters at wide receiver and linebacker alike. So that will be great. It'll be a big opportunity for Elijah Moore. And who knows, if he hits the ground running, catches a couple touchdowns, and his usage keeps going up and up, and he doesn't drop the balls, he makes the plays, he's out there blocking at 6'4", 205 pounds or whatever. He's got the size and the ability to do it. So it's great to hear it. LaWayne McCoy, I don't believe I heard Mike Norvell say as much about him, but he's another guy in LaWayne McCoy that you think as a true freshman, he's going to get an opportunity to get out there and show it. He's one of these guys that's making circus catches, and just turning heads in practice with his athleticism. He's the kind of guy that just has that elite. It's the difference. Look, guys, we brought in 16 blue chip high school recruits. We brought in 10 blue chip transfers, which is anywhere from sophomores on up to seniors. So yeah, there's talent all over this place. I'll say it again. I've said it a million times. This is far and away. I'm not burying the lead. I'm not trying to qualify or soften anything. This is far and away the most talented Florida State team that Mike Norvell has had. We'll see if we have the 13-0 season. We see if they end up hitting that ceiling on the field, because last year's team had, elite top 15. The top 15 of the team was really elite. We saw it when draft day came. But I'm here to tell you we're probably going to have 10 guys drafted this year. And we'll see how much they gel, how much they can grow in a specific year. But once you're winning 10, 12, 13 games, you don't have to have 2-3 years of proof like some of these other guys had to have. It only takes 1 year like Keon Coleman had to get taken. It was really a shame he wasn't taken in the first round, but he was taken early, first pick in the second round. It's huge. So I digress. We got to get through all these players at practice. Speaking of linebacker, I want to go straight to linebacker from wide receiver because, again, it's one of the biggest question marks. You bring back DJ Lundy. He entertained the transfer portal. Woo! Sigh of relief out there, fellas, ladies. Everybody out there in Florida State Nation, tell me you didn't have a sigh of relief to find out that DJ Lundy was coming back. I was trying to act tough. I wasn't worried about it. Everything will work itself out. We'll grab another transfer. We'll recruit that harder out of high school. But getting DJ Lundy back is huge. Go back and watch that LSU game. Go back and watch the entire season and see how many DJ Lundy plays that you didn't really realize how critical they were. And one thing we've seen from DJ Lundy, and one thing we're a victim of with DJ Lundy, is thinking of what he was as a freshman, as a sophomore. It's easy to get caught up in that when guys were forced on the field to start in those positions. You can look at that across the field. Amarion Cooper was forced to start as a true freshman. Robert Scott was forced to start as a true freshman. A lot of these guys were first in the roles that they weren't necessarily built for. They weren't ready for, but they were the best option at that time. Uh, all these years later, for them not necessarily to be the top option or to be fighting for a spot like Robert Scott is, that isn't a negative. Robert Scott is 10 times the player he was as a true freshman. It just speaks to the athleticism, the development, what has gone on behind the scenes. And back to Cam Riley, really excited about him, his experience, his maturity, and athleticism. Mike Norvell is kind of what he hit on in his presser. Leaving the finer points, learning the finer points of the defense is kind of what the big thing is for him right now. Cam Riley is 6'5", if you didn't know, 245 pounds. He's basically Patrick Payton, except for instead of putting a hand to the dirt or standing up and rushing the passer, he plays linebacker, and he really likes to play a middle linebacker or inside linebacker. The weak side Sam or Will linebackers. He does not play that outside linebacker just gonna smoke you on every play on the outside or rush the passer. He can go out there and literally guard guys. It doesn't make sense at his size because again, he's built like Pat Payton, but he will cover the shit out of a tight end or whoever. And with that length, think about how many block balls Pat Payton has rushing the passer. I believe he's going to be able to do some of that. Maybe they can, have him, under certain rules to blitz or drop back in coverage. And with that length, you can see him breaking up screen passes and short passes to the outside there with that length. So it'll be a lot of fun to see how they use Cam Riley. Because again, in the 4-2-5, there's not a ton of creativeness there. You got two linebackers, and they've got a ton of responsibilities. The biggest thing from FSU's linebackers that you need is just to handle your responsibilities, handle your gap, get your guy, don't give up the big play. Eventually, you can see Tatum Bethune making big plays. You saw Kalen DeLoach being able to be brought off the edge and get a fumble for 6 points. Those things happen, but first and foremost, the most important thing is getting them in there. I see a question in the chat asking about our guy, Destin Hill. Was he practicing? Yes and no. He was at practice. I believe they had him in like a white, some kind of no contact jersey. But yes, he seems to be doing great. He's running around. He's out there participating with his teammates. But I wouldn't get too excited and get to counting my chickens as far as him getting to play early in the season or even in the season whatsoever. I would still stand on the fact that if they're going to use him, it would likely be coming off a bye way later in the season, or maybe for an ACC title game if they want to give it a try. But then you even have a question of, okay, do we want to do that, or do we want to wait and ease them through camp, ease them into it the next year, or do we want to try and bring them in a pressure situation at the end of the season? So we'll see. ACLs have gotten better and better and better. We saw Adrian Peterson, I think it was 2012, come back in 6 months and run for like 1,200 yards or whatever it was. So yeah, it's possible. But don't get too excited. Just be happy for the young man that he is, nice and healthy. Jacob Rizzi is one of the last players that Mike Norvell kind of keyed on. Pretty much, let's see what happens when we get the pads on, is what Norvell said. There's only so much you can tell about what your center and your guard is going to be able to do amongst all that competition. Dude from Harvard, you already know how smart he is. You know that he has certain techniques and he's going to be able to do what you need to do at a high level. The question is, can he handle Joshua Farmer in his mouth? Can he handle Daryl Jackson in his mouth? Can he handle those guys doing games and passing each other off without leaving getting run over and put on his butt or get straight back there to the passer? Maurice Smith is your starter at center, but if you could have a Jacob Rizzi, give him a challenge, or be competent enough that you can sit Maurice Smith for a Syracuse and let him rest because he has whatever, a swollen ankle or the case, whatever it may be, instead of forcing him to play through injury like he has the rest of his, the majority of his career. As I mentioned earlier, with guys like Maurice Smith being another one, Robert Scott forced to play as true freshmen and sophomores. They weren't just forced to start and play; they're forced to play through injury. Like, we got to have you. If you come off the field, there is such a level of drop off that Florida State is in trouble. So yeah, it's just huge for the depth. I cannot stress that enough. There's this kind of idea out there that Florida State is just super young. They return no production and all these things, and it's fair. When you don't bring back a quarterback, when you lose your quarterback, sure, you're not returning a ton of starters. When you're, as we pointed out, a ton wide receiver, that is pretty much wipes clean. There is just very little to zero stats at wide receiver. But how many stats do we have at wide receiver in 2022 when we brought in Johnny Wilson and all those guys and everything completely changed? The wide receiver room compared to what it was in 2021, the last time Florida State had a really subpar wide receiver room, it's miles and miles and miles of difference. None of those guys from 2021 probably would have a chance to start on this team. Hakeem Williams is an absolute freak of nature. If we can get him going, if he takes the next step, I heard a couple nice things about him coming out of practice today. Freak. And he's my bet to end up being a starter out there. You still have Kentron Portier coming back, who has always been a playmaker as long as he's been healthy. You've got Jalen Lucas, who worked at, surprisingly, punt returner at practice today from what I saw, not at kick returner. So we'll see if that lasts, if they're going to flip them back and forth, or they just know what they have at kick returner. But we'll see if that's something to do with kind of the size and the kind of athlete they have. That's kind of, it makes sense. But just for a guy who returned 3 kickoffs for touchdowns at Indiana or wherever it was, you would like to see him, do something. And there's no doubt with Jalen Lucas and Ja'Kai Douglas, like, we've got talent. There's plenty of young guys. We're going to be good. I haven't even mentioned Malik Benson. If anybody that's played the college football 25 so far, he's an absolute beast. The go routes, the post, he should be an absolute nightmare there. He was kind of the offensive playmaker of spring practice. We didn't get to see it a ton in the spring game because he got a little dinged up. So it is what it is. Tight end is another position that folks have been somewhat worried at. Not so much myself. I think you have, it's thin enough at tight end where you're going to maybe get to see some young guys get some playing time. You're going to get to see Landon Thomas out there and make some catches. But Kyle Morlock, I've been high on him since I predicted him to go to the Noles the second he hit the portal back from Shorter last year. Huge Kyle Morlock fan. Kyle Morlock last year, you had way too many weapons. You had Jaheim Bell in a money year. There was just so many reasons. Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, so many guys with his height and his skill set and added speed and things of that nature, and him still adapting to the physicality of the true Division I, the blocking that comes along with tight end. Kyle Morlock with a little bit of health, he's looking better and better. He's going to be nasty, more like your thriller kind of John Krasinski role this year than the aloof one we got last year. I'm telling you, Kyle Morlock is going to be a breakout. He's going to make a lot of plays. He's one of these guys that, God willing, is going to be in those holes of those zone defenses. He's going to get matchups against these 5'11", 6 foot even, 5'10" safeties, slot cornerbacks, and things of that nature. And he's going to make a lot of plays. As long as the blocking is there, I look for him to take a big step. So really excited about him for sure. And the offensive line, just to harp on that again, I talked about Maurice Smith. Darius Washington, another guy. Class of 2019, we're talking about Willie Taggart years. Here's a guy that was coached by Charlie Ward, I believe. Or not coached by Charlie Ward, but while he was at high school, Charlie Ward was coaching basketball, if I have that right, at his high school. So pretty cool. Young man comes in. He's played all over the place. Darius Washington has been a swing lineman for Florida State, extremely dedicated, just kept his head down and fought and gotten better and better and better. Towards the last of the season, out of nowhere, all of a sudden, he's taking your best snaps out of anybody at tackle, and now you've got him listed between the different media outlets. He's a top 5 offensive tackle in just about all of them. I think the consensus is that he's like a number 3 offensive tackle in the nation this year. How long has it been since Florida State has had a top 10 offensive tackle in the nation going into a year? Guys, I'm telling you, it makes a giant difference. He has the size, he has the strength. He is a grown man, GAM. So yeah, having him at tackle is going to be huge for that offensive line. When you look at guard, guys, we go 6 deep in competition at guard. It is ridiculous. You look at Keandre Jones. You look at uh, Terrence Ferguson from Alabama. That's 2 guys right there. If you had Keandre Jones and Terrence Ferguson, you'd be pretty damn happy. Here's 2 guys that have got extended snaps in the SEC for Auburn and Alabama, guys that were going to be big parts of their future plans. You get them over here. Well, that's not it. That's just 2 of your guys. You get another guy in Richie Leonard, who you really wanted out of high school, but went to UF and was their best offensive lineman, in my opinion. They'll argue it to death, but go look at the number of snaps. You go watch the games. I thought he was their best player, most consistent player, making up for other guys' mistakes and things of that nature. So we get him over here. So there's a third starter, and it goes deep. It goes deep. Robert Scott, we've talked about, moved inside, is going to compete at guard. If you know a good guard, if there's a guard I'm missing, throw him out there. Julian Armella has moved inside and is playing some guard. You got Bryson Estes. You've got Jalen Early. There are so many guys, and I know I probably forgot one of the top guys, but yeah, guard it's just crazy. There's so many great players. And then you go to center. We already mentioned Maury Smith. Jacob Rizzi just came in. Right tackle is people's question. Jeremiah Byers. But again, Jeremiah Byers is in a situation to me like Fentrell Cypress. You're not going to grab some ready-made tackle out of the portal. It's going to take some time. And yeah, he took some lumps, but he was still pretty damn good last year. And then going into year 2, I'd say Jeremiah Byers going into year 2. What you have right now in Jeremiah Byers would have been your best tackle last year going into the season. And that was your 13-0 season, the season that you can't replicate. So just think of the level of that. That is huge. A couple of years ago, like I said, when Robert Scott was a freshman, he was forced to start at guard. He would not be on the 3 deep on this current team, on this current roster. We are deep, deep, deep. We're going to be okay. Knock on wood that I didn't, ruin it. But for whatever reason, if they would go with Ferguson and Jones to start the year and Jones goes down, that's all right. We got Leonard to pop right in there. That is going to be no problem. I would never wish that on anybody, but yeah, big stuff. The big guys that we saw that went to ACC media days with Mike Norvell, the first of them was Darius Washington, already mentioned, but the other 2, Joshua Farmer and Daryl Jackson. Again, we're just in helmets. You're not going to get a lot. You can look and see how they did through drills and stuff on the cute little highlights they have on YouTube. But we're going to have to wait and see when the pads get on. When the pads get on, it's going to be fun to see those matchups of your Terrence Ferguson coming in here, your Keandre Jones, who in practice we heard like a lot that he was the one guy who could really give Braden Fisk and those guys a run for their money on certain snaps, showed a high ceiling. It's going to be a lot of fun to see him. It's going to be a lot of fun again to see the guy come over from Florida and get reps against those guys. But we know what we got in Joshua Farmer. We know to a certain extent what we got out of Daryl Jackson. But the hype I'm getting is just, yeah, he's real. People forget, the Georgia game happened, all that stuff. He didn't get to play last season. But yeah, this dude is 6'6", 300-something pounds and a freak. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch him and Daniel Lyons behind him. The young tackles coming in. You got Grady Kelly, who looks really good coming out there. Tomiwa Durajaye, one of the transfers he brought in, who's going to slide inside and play some snaps. It's going to be a lot of fun. Patrick Payton was also one of those guys that went to the ACC media days. He's projected to be a first-round pick. Marvin Jones Jr., you bring him over from Georgia. Just a lot of fun, man. This defense is going to be absolutely nasty. I mentioned linebacker being the kind of weakness. But again, when you look at having DJ Lundy, and whether you start Cam Riley or Juice, whether you start Sean Murphy, any of those guys, I'm fine with it. I think we're really, really deep. We've got young players like Blake Nicholson, who it's not the end of the world. Before, we're just so used to if Kalen DeLoach goes down or if Tatum Bethune goes down, it's an avalanche to what's below. But no, we may have a little bit lower of floors than these guys, bringing them up there from what we had two seniors who now went on to play in the NFL, but the ceilings are higher as well. Amari Williams is one of those true freshmen that just came in and, yeah, playing on both sides of the ball. Apparently, he has a high ceiling at tight end, so they're going to play him out there. Maybe we'll see a little bit about what could have been with Travis Hunter had he came to Florida State and was used correctly on both sides of the ball. Maybe 20 snaps here, 20 snaps here. Maybe use him for matchups in different games. So that'll be a lot of fun to see. He's an athlete. You're borderline 5-star. I believe he was a 5-star in the 2025 class, reclassified to 2024. So was only listed as a 4-star defensive end. But make no mistake, he's a 5-star talent. And you see that. Maybe as his body's developing, he does tight end. Maybe he gets more settled into one or the other as the pass rusher later on. It seems like his heart's really in tight end. I know people see a guy coming, it's like, whoa, that's your blue chip recruit, guys. We really. How can you take him off the end? Those are so hard to get, guys. Look, this staff, they're going to get him. We've talked about it ad nauseum, whether it's through the portal, whether it's through high school. Uh, they're going to get their guys out there. So you're going to play them to the best of their ability in the best spots. So yeah, I'm totally fine with them playing some tight end. I thought I mentioned Dustin Hill earlier, but Jerome Shaw wants to know about him. Again, he was out there, I believe, in a no contact jersey, but don't read too much into that. He's probably not going to suit up for the Noles, if anything, to the end of the season. And still, you have to question that. I'd love to be proven wrong, but ACLs are tough. Long road to hoe. Only 4 weeks out from the season. Again, as we are here 30 days away from kickoff in Dublin, Ireland. Again, right here at the voice of college football, FSU voice of college football, that is. Our guy, Mark Rogers, is usually hosting this show. He has a family thing to do. Also, Chris Frazier of Spear Addicts, James Coleman of At Den Media Group, are usually here. They get here whenever they can make it. Make sure you go check out everybody's channels. Subscribe to Spear Addicts, subscribe to Den Media Group, subscribe to all the different Voice of College Football so you can keep track on, whoever FSU is going to be playing. Keep track of the main channel for all your realignment news and that stuff. And of course, go check out my channel, Renegade Report. Actually, it's the Renegade Report right here at YouTube. And yeah, we go live 4 days a week. We've got the Renegade Roast on Mondays and then the Renegade Rundown Tuesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Can't wait for the season to get here again, just 30 days away. When that gets here, I will be hosting the FSU postgame live. We do about 45 minutes to an hour, maybe an hour, 15 minutes live after each game this season. We'll be right here. I'm going to try to go with a little bit more of an immediate live post game show this year as opposed to last year. I really wanted to take my time, get set up with a nice little temporary studio to do a regular podcast with you guys. But I'm thinking this year I may take my tripod and just like go live as soon as the game's over as I'm walking out of the arena. So get something cool like that, just the atmosphere of a game. Maybe not if we lost. I might not feel like doing that, but that'll be a lot of fun. And we really appreciate you guys again joining us. Make sure you go subscribe to all those different shows, as our guy Jackson Johnson always likes to post those link trees and the different links for us. We appreciate you, Jackson. But again, we're talking Florida State football as camp has finally opened. Again, guys, if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, throw them in the chat. I'll try to answer them the best I can. If I had my phone number on here, I would throw it up there for you guys, but I do not. Maybe I can put it in a comment as we do this a little bit different than we normally do. But yeah, conference realignment has been a major topic of discussion. So I'd be doing a disservice if we didn't at least talk about it for a little bit. I'm being totally honest. I'm wiped out. I'm so damn tired of talking about conference realignment. FSU to the Big Ten. Does the SEC want us? Does the Big Ten want us? All these different things. But it is what it is. When people come out like they did the last couple weeks, reporting just straight BS rumors and innuendos as if it's facts, And I swear I don't have scabies. I'm trying to fix my mustache and look pretty for you guys. It drives me nuts when it's not symmetrical. Oh man. But yeah, it's been nuts, man. All of a sudden, an Arizona blogger for 247 comes out of nowhere. FSU expected to the Big 12, in talks with the Big 12. One tweet. Everybody, the entire nation is doing exposés, think pieces on his little 140 character tweet, as if it's a fact. Florida State is talking to Big 12. They're getting ready to go right now, right now, right now. Greg Swaim jumps on board. Breaking news, imminent. Florida State to the Big 12. They're not only in talks, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen. They're pulling together the funds, private equities. They don't have to worry about the lawsuit or nothing. They're going to pay the exit fees. They're going to raise the money to match this and that. All these things. It sounded great. So what else did they do? Brett McMurphy jumps on and he piles on. He goes and gets a bunch of anonymous quotes from a bunch of schools, pretty much trash talking FSU, talking about how they're disruptive. I don't know why any team would take this. They're like trying to hold college football hostage, get wherever they want to go. They're terrible partners, all these things. And surely it was probably from schools who, killed the Pac-12 or left their conference to get to where they're at. Because again, Florida State and Clemson are the only two powers left in the ACC or the Big 12. Everybody else jumped ship. USC, Oregon, we saw Oklahoma, Texas. They already jumped ship, but Florida State, they're the bad ones for trying to get out now. Florida State's the bad ones for trying to get the ACC to work with us. But I digress. So that was the rumors. FSU to the Big 12. They get the quotes from Sankey. They get the quotes from Petiti. We're happy with 16. We're happy with 18. We're not worried about going forward now. We're not expanding right now. So that's what they use. Big 10, SEC not interested. Big 12 wants them. Woohoo! Let's go. Brett Yormark's willing to talk about it. He's talking about private equity, but it was all hogwash. I got on this show with Mark Rogers. I broke it down, the whole list of why. Here's what's going on. Here's the truth. It's, 25 was always going to be the best case scenario. We were praying for 2025, but it looked like 26. Worst possible case scenario of 27. But we all really would like 2026 is what it's looking like. Okay. We knew we had till August 15th deadline to play in a different conference in 2025. That was the big question. Would it be before or after? We all knew the announcement was coming, but the consensus was after. Unless something major happened, you could get it before. By June 30th, you needed 7 or 8 teams to leave the conference. That would fold it. That would fix it. There was all different things that could trigger. The date was August 15th. Again, at Florida State had to announce. Now the rumor is they are not. They will remain. They're not going to announce till after. They're going to remain in the ACC for 2024 and 2025. Now the Big 10 and the SEC, again, that was what they were reporting about now. Not now, or not in the future, but now. They're not worried about them now. David Hale, the past couple of days, we've had David Hale. We've had Ross Dellinger, one of the ones that stoked it in the beginning, circle back, and they have all said, yes, it's just now. The SEC and the Big 10, should the ACC collapse, should Florida State get out, should they become a free agent, they will definitely have to look at it. And here's all the different reasons why. And there's been several different articles. Even Greg Swaim himself, the realignment czar, came out today saying, oh, yeah, Big 12 more likely to get Miami and 4 or 5 of these other lesser ACC teams. But yeah, fat chance of Florida State and Clemson going there. That's not what they want. They want to get in the Big 10, but the SEC doesn't want to lose them as a prop. Guys, I promise I wouldn't steer you wrong. Chris Frazier wouldn't. Mark wouldn't if he could help it. James Frazier wouldn't lead you wrong. Just keep following us. Keep listening to what we have to say. And anybody can be right, anybody can be wrong. But anybody that comes out in this realignment and says they know for a fact this conference and that conference, they're lying to you. Florida State wants to be in the Big 10. That is known. I'm pretty confident in that. You can call me a liar. Florida State has done a lot of things. They've worked towards AAU. They are working on building a major medical research building on campus. Outside medical centers in Panama City. They want to get another one maybe closer to Pensacola. All these different areas and things they're doing. Huge. Academics, you've seen the giant climb, but research is the next step. They want that AAU accreditation. They sent players to the Big Ten Leadership Conference or whatever last 3 or 4 times. They're getting active with alumni base in that area. It's publicly documented. This isn't breaking news. Like there's been several trips by Alfred and different members of FSU boosters and things of that nature to the Chicago area where the Big Ten is located for different events and booster things. It's very important. It would be the best case scenario. Everybody knows Fox wants Florida State. They'd have to be crazy to not want them. Okay. And ESPN would have to be crazy to not want to lose Florida State and Clemson. Because as it stands, that's 5 national championships, since 1990 for Florida State and Clemson, and even more if you go back to 1980, which is a list I saw. If you go back to 1980 and you look at the national championships, as it stands, if Florida State and Clemson were to go to the Big Ten, it would close that gap, and I could be off by 1 or 2 here. It would be something like 21 national titles for the SEC since 1980, 17 for the Big Ten. Now, as it stands with FSU in the ACC, or if the FSU went to the SEC, that would be 27 national titles to 11 ESPN, or just the SEC if FSU and Clemson go. So if FSU and Clemson go to the SEC, it's ball game. It's over with. They are far and away the best conference. The Big Ten's done. There's not enough programs for them to close the gap. The SEC could completely take over college football. You got Florida and Florida State. You got Clemson and South Carolina. You got Oklahoma and Texas A&M. Yeah, and Georgia. At that point, they'd probably end up getting Georgia Tech or something like that. But yeah. Anyways, just had to get that off my chest. It finally came back to reality, just like I kind of said it would. But, there was a lot of BS getting peddled out there. Florida State, you've seen it. I don't care who you are in here. Look, Big 12, Big 10, SEC media days. They're talking about Florida State. Every channel on YouTube's talking about Florida State. And it's cool. People get to hear a different voice or whatever the case may be. People get to go viral. You see little Bobby Hills all over the place talking crap. Florida State ain't nowhere near AAU. They better take that Big 12 check. Guys, it's not viable. It'll never be viable. It doesn't make sense. Outside of like some kind of 2-year plan, transition to one of the other conferences, some deal you worked out with Fox or ESPN, guys, it just would not make sense. The problem, it doesn't matter how much money the Big 12 raises. The Big 12 could raise, Scrooge McDuck money. They could go jumping off a dive board and go swimming through all their gold coins, and it still would not be enough, because a couple years after they got that money, whatever it is, $100 million for Clemson and Florida State each, a couple years later, hell, maybe the next day after they sign that contract, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to come knocking. Yeah, about this deal we got. See, the way it's set up, and we got like 6, 8 playoff picks, and they got 2, and they only got 2 teams, and we got these many teams. They're going to get double or at least 50% more. Everything's relative, guys. Florida State is not looking for a dollar amount, 60, 70, 80 million. No, they need to keep up with the Joneses. So, yeah, the Big 12 would have to put some escalating clause where they have to stay 10% within the average of the Big 10 or the SEC, and it just would never work. If they were willing to do crazy unequal revenue sharing like that, guess what? Oklahoma and Texas would still be where? In the Big 12. And I rest my case. Again, guys, if you have any questions, now is to throw them up in the chat. Now is the time to throw them up in the chat. I'm going to throw my phone number up here. If you guys have any questions about Florida State football, now is the time. I'll let you guys do a special call-in segment here on the Voice of College Football. But if I hear any bad language, I will cut you off, because that's not what we do around this show. But boom, yeah, get your question in at 850-495-1906 if you have one right now. Recruiting, again, going great. Florida State currently with 12 commitments, 10 or 11 blue chips, depending on which service you look at. They were 10 of 10 at one point in time. You get one guy that's a 3-star, they end up dropping one that's a 3-star. It doesn't matter. Florida State's killing it, still around a 92 average. it's just amazing how far you've came since even last year in recruiting, but especially the year before. It's just been a gradual climb. You were 50% with 9 and 9 and 22, or in 23, and then the 24 class, you go 16 and 7 blue chips, including the 10 transfers, and here you are in this class, whatever, 90 something percent blue chip ratio, 11 out of 12 blue chips. It's really beautiful. You're just getting started. You're recruiting better. The kind of thing that people want to compare FSU to is Clemson. Oh, well, they recruit like Clemson did when they were winning, and they do the portal. No, we're recruiting better than Clemson ever did. Clemson never recruited as good as Florida State recruited in the 2024 class. They didn't do that until like 2020, 2021, something like that. Go back and look at those Clemson recruiting classes. They were 50% blue chip ratio. They were 9 or 10 blue chips and 9 or 10 3-stars. Every single year, they did a great job at development. They recruited about the same exact as they're recruiting now, which Florida State has pretty much, passed them up a little bit. We'll see here. But we got a question coming in. It looks like, boom, you are live on the voice of college football. And I'll scroll back up and hit some of those questions from the chat. Y'all know I like to get on a rant every once in a while. You're live.
Hey, how you doing today, George?
Doing good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I got some questions about your take on the ACC Media Days. How have you been feeling about them this year?
Well, we hit it pretty good on the show, but as far as overall, man, it's a joke. Whatever. They got a giant banner, and it says the toughest non-conference schedule. I guess that's because adding Cal and Stanford and SMU, you've now got the crappiest in-conference schedule in the country. So it's just a joke as usual. Jim Phillips joke comments. I thought Florida State really represented themselves well, bringing 3 high school recruits out there that are all going to be high draft picks in this year's draft, and Darius Washington, Josh Farmer, and Patrick Payton. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, overall, just can't wait to get out, Jackson. And we really appreciate you calling in. We'll let you get another question off. I heard a plural there.
Well, I will say it's going to be fun watching Florida State SMU. And I'll be honest, it took a little while for me to get used to that being a conference game. But it's easier for me to get used to that than it is like Florida State, California.
Yeah, it's and they're not on they are on our schedule, I think, but it's not so much like the problem of playing this or that. The problem is go look at what Virginia Tech and Syracuse's schedule is like. It's ridiculous when you've got 17 teams and you've got these rivals where Clemson plays Florida State every year. They play Miami every year. By the time you do that, there's only you've got 12, 13 teams in rotation for playing Clemson. They only play them once every 5 years. And when they do, NC State, Louisville, and Florida State ain't on the schedule. But we appreciate you, brother. I'm going to take the next caller. You're live on the voice of college football. Oh, we got a lot of noise in the background, buddy. Yeah, you got to turn it off and call back, man. Guys, if you call in, you got to have the show muted, or it makes a crazy backup loop there. So let me scroll up the chat here. And again, if that was you that called, just call right back with your thing muted. And I believe they have already here. Looks like somebody from South Carolina. You're live on the Voice of College Football. What you got for us?
Hey, how are you? This is Jerome. Is this George?
Yes, sir. What's going on, Jerome?
Hey, I've been wonderful. Breathing college football is almost like less than 30 days away. Oh my goodness, I can't wait.
Absolutely, I'm right there with you, brother. Did you have a question for us?
Yes, I actually have 3. Number 1, best freshman. I can't say best freshman. Who do you think was the best looking newcomer in since spring or in the first fall practice?
All right, so I'm gonna get you to go ahead and spit all 3 of them out real quick so we can keep this thing rolling. But I'll try to do my best to get all 3 of them for you. No problem.
Yes, sir. Next question. Would you prefer Big Ten or SEC as far as revenue?
Big Ten, baby. I can answer that one quick.
Okay, yes, sir. And last but not least, as far as rivals that we have, Miami, Florida, and Clemson, who do you hate the most?
The first and the third ones are really good. We appreciate you calling in, Jerome, and we'll talk to you next time, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, man. Go Noles. Ooh, so let's go back before I forget about the newcomer. We talked about this a little bit earlier on. Cam Davis was kind of my early answer on offense, but the more it passes and the more I see out of Roydell Williams, Keziah Holmes, Lawrence Toafili, I feel like Landon Thomas at tight end, Elijah. I'm having a, I don't want to say this. Is it Elijah McCoy? I'm having a total brain fart. But our guy Elijah at wide receiver, and LaWayne McCoy, those two guys are going to look really, really good and have a good shot. So I'm between Landon Thomas and Elijah there. So we'll see which one of those can be a bigger impact on offense. As far as the bigger rival that I hate the most, that's Miami all day and tomorrow. Florida, don't get me wrong, I'm not a Florida fan. I like to make fun of them. Seems like I have more actual friends that are Florida, so maybe I can relate to people that are fans of that school more. But Miami, it's just really nasty. The E-Canes thing, the whole, there's not as many fist fights at the Florida State UF game as there is at the Miami game. So definitely there as far as that goes. And yeah, newcomers. I guess I could give you one for defense. Marvin Jones Jr. is the one that's the most intriguing, obviously. Like how good is Marvin Jones Jr.? How high of a level can he rise to that year? So it'll be a lot of fun to see what he does on that side too. So I'm looking for some questions here because I know I got called out for not reading the ones in the chat. But y'all are talking so much junk and having so much fun that I'm not having a hard time finding questions. Here we go. Okay, no, George is a troller. He's a Florida Gator. Not answering your troll questions there, George, but we appreciate you. You are tearing that damn chat up, bro. Holy moly. As we are here at 5:52, we've got about 8 minutes left. So again, we appreciate the callers we've had so far. If you've got any questions, now would be the time to get those off. August 12th, Josh Petty, offensive tackle, 5-star. He will be committing. Georgia Tech and Ohio State smoke has came in pretty strong here as of late, but I'm not relenting. He's just too much of a priority for this class. I would hate to see him go. I can't, only he knows it in his heart, and he may not even know. But Florida State has done everything they could up until this point, and I'm gonna believe he's gonna be a no. Again, there's been a lot of talk about the amount of depth, and FSU doesn't bring anybody back, and they built a team full of mercenaries and all these things about the giant drop-off. Ole Miss is going to be the FSU of last year, this year. Fuck that. Excuse my language. I'm so sorry. Excuse my language. Bump that. FSU is going to be the FSU of last year. And I've seen a couple of things here as of late that have really, held to that. So Florida State is number 2 in the entire nation when it comes to East and West Shrine Bowls invites, preseason invites. So basically what that's saying is it's like the Senior Bowl. It's like a Pro Bowl for college, but only seniors and redshirt juniors are available. 18 Seminoles on that list. 18 draft eligible players make the Shrine list. And I'm gonna read them out for you because these are all guys with possibilities to get drafted. Devontae Brown, the safety we brought in, who we talked about. Shaheem Brown will get drafted. Jeremiah Byers, probably going to get drafted. If he does what I think he's going to do, he'll be in the middle of the draft. Omarion Cooper comes back from Colorado. He's going to have a good year, but he has a good chance. Fentrell Cypress, lock for the draft. Joshua Farmer, day 1 or day 2 pick in the draft. Keandre Jones, I'd like to think he's a draft pick, but offensive line, it's tough. We'll see. Sione Lolohea, he's going somewhere in the draft. DJ Lundy, he's going somewhere in the draft. Alex Mastromano, I don't know that much about punters and kickers in the NFL, just being honest. But as far as Mastromano and Fitzgerald, they should have both a pretty damn good chance of getting drafted as specialists with everything I know. But maybe they just don't get drafted at all, and they'll have to sign a free agent deal. Patrick Payton, projected first-round draft pick. Cam Riley, one of these borderline guys. We'll see if he comes out this year. Well, no, I think he's got to come out this year. Good chance of getting drafted. Jacob Rizzi, we'll have to see. Robert Scott, he's going somewhere. Lawrence Toafili, he's going somewhere. DJ Uiagalelei, he's going somewhere. Darius Washington, he's going somewhere early. Roydell Williams, he's going somewhere. I went through that list and I came up with pretty much you're about guaranteed 10 guys. It's either going to be 9, 10, 11 guys, something like that. You're going to have a good group of draft picks. And this is something I've said going back even before the draft last year. Mike Norvell is going to have a really good shot at breaking that 3-year draft record at Florida State. If he can knock down 10 again this year and be sitting at 20 going to the 2025 season, we'll see what he does in the portal, but he'll have a good shot. He was able to build up a pretty considerable amount of talent and really create a program with depth and sustainability through high school and the portal. Through grabbing guys through the portal that would last for not just 1 year, but 2, 3, even some 4 years. You grab a guy like Juice out of the portal who is really a true freshman. So you're getting at least 3 years out of him. You got Fintrell coming back. You got all these guys that are coming back. The 1-year wonders like Braden Fisk and Keon Coleman have been much fewer and farther between. And we brought in 27 blue chips in this class. We had 27 blue chips on the roster last year. And we brought in 27 blue chips in the 2024 class. People are worried about recruiting right now, as we have 11 blue chips committed to the class of 2025. And I believe we still sit number 1 in the class of 2026. Here's what I'm going to say, guys. Just take a deep breath. Florida State is rolling, okay? We're going to have a chance at the playoffs this year. We're going to have a chance next year. What we're not going to be is Georgia and be able to roll and win certain games the way that Georgia does. But to win a national championship, even in college football, you do not have to be that dominant. You have to just be good enough to win every game. And this team will be good enough to compete for national championships. Doing what this coaching staff does. We now have a microphone in the helmet. We don't even know how that's going to affect the game, but it's got to help Mike Norvell. Got to. He's a play caller. That's his whole thing. So don't be shocked if Florida State goes on some crazy runs. Don't get shocked if they lose a game that they're not supposed to lose. I'm not gonna lie, I would be shocked, but it can very well happen. You can lose a game or two this year. It's not the end of the world. The future is bright. Because it doesn't take a mathematician to formulate this thing out. By 26 and 27, you're gonna have a football team that's 70 to 90% blue chip ratio, somewhere in that range, and you're gonna be a juggernaut. As long as the portal stays open and we keep doing what we're doing in high school, it's gonna be a whole lot of fun to watch Florida State football. We're going to see you guys in Ireland, and we're going to see you back in Doak Campbell for Boston College. We're going to see you back in Doak Campbell for Memphis, I believe it is, week 3 or week 4 after a bye week. Jen's going to bring us some barbecue down. It's going to be a lot of fun. Love you guys. Thanks to everybody for joining us at the Voice of College Football, FSU Voice of College Football. So everybody get over again to Spear Addicts, Chris Frazier's channel. Get over to Den Media Group, James Coleman's channel. Go over there, subscribe, follow, make sure you stay up to date with them. Get over to the main Voice of College Football channel, subscribe to that one as well as this one. And if you could, for your guy George, go over to @the Renegade Report, sub, like, all that good stuff. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. I saw somebody ask about snowfall, and yeah, it's good stuff. I haven't heard anything new. If I had it, I'd throw it out there to you, but we will see. And go Noles.